All right, I'm going to go ahead and introduce what we're going to be talking about today. So this is hashtag squad goals. This is our webinar for the month of August, and it's with Alisha, Higley, and Tiffany, Thom. And I also want to give a couple reminders about upcoming opportunities and programming that we've got for you. So just a reminder, the proposals for the conference, the application is open currently and it'll close after this weekend. So if you have any ideas or things in mind that you think you might want to present, I strongly encourage you to go ahead and propose a session for us. We also, obviously you are going to be listening to the webinar today. We also have all previous webinars up on YouTube that you go watch at your leisure. And we accept webinar proposals on a rolling basis. So if you are interested in proposing a webinar, you can do that through our website. We also have opportunities to write for the OE blog, and we try to put out a couple a month for you to read as well from other folks. And then just a heads up for the OE book club, in a couple weeks we will be discussing Homegoing by Ya Gyasi, and I strongly recommend it. It's been a really great read so far, and I'll be sending out more information about that in the coming weeks. All right, so I just would like to give you a chance to see our presenters, since you will be looking at their slides rather than their faces during this webinar. So just so you can put a name and a face to each of them. And then I'm going to go ahead and actually pass it off over to them to start.
So we're having a problem. It's not letting us share the screen now.
Interesting. Okay, let me see if I stop my sharing, if that helps.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
Well, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for attending our webinar. As Shannon said, my name is Tiffany Thom.
And I'm Alisha Higley, and we're going to talk about hashtag squad goals. So we're going to start off talking about what the importance of a strong team is. So throughout this presentation, you know, if you have some examples of good teams that you've been on or bad teams that you've been on, you're more than welcome to save those comments for the end of the presentation, because we should have time for questions and examples if you'd like to share them.
Typically, this has been done in person, so we're just going to save these questions for the end. That way you guys have plenty of time to type your questions and answers.
So how do we know the information that we're going to be passing over to you?
So when we started off a few years ago, Alisha and I were both coworkers on the same team. We were enrollment service associates. Basically, we were frontline staff helping students with billing, financial aid, registration, and that kind of stuff. We were doing pretty well. We were fully staffed. We had a manager. We had a team leader. There were definitely some issues and dynamics that could have benefited for the kind of stuff that we're going to talk about today. But for the most part, we were well off. A couple months after I started, however, our manager let us know that the position just honestly wasn't a really good fit for her and that she'd be leaving us. She was kind enough to give us 2 months notice in hopes that the administration would be able to find a replacement for her in a timely manner and maybe even have some training. But as these things tend to happen, they did not find a replacement for her until 4.5 months later. So unfortunately, that left our team managerless for 2.5 months. And this was really difficult for us. We kind of turned into a broken team, and it just fractured. So we had issues with like who should be doing what, because there were a lot of roles that our previous manager had, their responsibilities that she had done that no one was really sure who should be doing anymore. Our team lead tried to take a lot of them on, but it also became kind of like a question of power, like, are these roles really appropriate for different people to be taking on? So it was just very difficult. Luckily, Alisha was then hired as our customer service manager after those 2.5 months. And it was really nice having someone who had such a background in our team and who understood our struggles to be able to know exactly what she wanted to change and where she wanted our team to go.
Yeah, I had a really unique opportunity, and it was kind of that golden opportunity that doesn't happen very often, to where I was able to essentially be promoted from a position that I was going to now be supervising. So it really gave me an advantage to knowing and understanding the exact dynamics of the team, what the struggles were within the team, the processes that were, we were having difficulties with. So it gave me that opportunity to really go, okay, I know these are the issues that we're having, and now what can we do to make it better? And like Tiffany was saying, there were a lot of, issues with what responsibilities people had taken on and whether or not they were appropriate. And so really reeling things in to find out what was going to work best for our team. Our lead at the time found another position on campus that was a great position for them. So they ended up moving over to another department, and that gave me the opportunity to look for a new lead, i.e. Tiffany stepping in and being the new team lead. This gave us that opportunity to really develop that position for the needs of the department, as well as what was going to work best for her and I.
Yeah, we really just built it from the ground up. We took everything we had previously known about, the team lead manager relationship off the table, and we just constructed what worked best for us and our team, which was a really great opportunity.
So this is kind of a little bit of an outline of what we're hoping that you can take away from this presentation. We're going to have some concrete examples of what we've done and what we have found that work. And I understand that not all of these examples are going to work for everybody or for every team, but really it's just taking away and having an understanding of that role of where perceptive plays and the dynamics that you can have with other people, and really creating a much better and more cohesive environment. And then even taking it a step further and looking at how this can benefit everyone. It doesn't matter whether you're a team of 1, a team of 5, a team of 20. A lot of the things that we're going to talk about you have benefits and takeaways from, even if you're an introvert or an extrovert. But we can all do better from building improved relationships with those that we work with.
So we're going to talk briefly about our established teams. So you may have some teams that are already in existence that have great bonds and relationships, so what can be done to improve those, or maybe you have some struggles that you need to work through. So we're going to spend this section talking through what you can do for your current team.
And the first part that we want to go over is perception and communication, because there are a lot of times where misperception and miscommunication can happen, and that can cause a lot of tension within a team, especially if those aren't being addressed. We do have a couple quick short videos that we would like to play.
I'm at the airport, and they've got this deal for 5 donuts for $5. And I set my stuff down, and I pick up the paper, and I start reading the paper. And this guy sits down across from me. A little while later, I hear this rustling on the table, and I'm like, I look over, and the guy has got his hand in the bag of donuts. Okay, that's a bit weird, but it doesn't really matter. The guy looks like he's homeless. He probably needs it more than I do. So I'm just getting into the social pages, and I hear this rustling on the table again. And I look over, and the guy's got his hand in the bag of donuts again. He takes a bite, and I'm like, what the crap? Now I'm getting a bit angry, but the precedent has been set, and so I don't feel like I can say anything. But I reach into the bag a bit more aggressively, I take a bite, and I just shake my head like, whatever. So a few minutes have gone by, and there's this call on the loudspeaker for the next departure, and the guy gets up and he starts getting up all his stuff, and he gets to the end of the table and he stops. And I see him out of the corner of my eye, and he reaches into the bag, and he pulls out the last donut. And I'm like, seriously? And he looks at me, he breaks it in two, and he hands it to me. I reach out, and I take this half, and I'm in total disbelief. And he kind of nods at me, and he walks off. So, while I'm sitting here, pondering the absurdity of what's just happened, I hear the call for my flight. And so I get up, and I grab my bag, and I grab my jacket. And under my jacket is my bag of donuts. Not only was I eating that guy's donuts the whole time, and he didn't say anything, he took out his last donut, and he broke it in half and gave it to me.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay, so
If you're like me and that video hit you in the feels a little bit and got you a little teary, we also have a funny video for you, so don't worry.
Look at the cute dog.
All the boys are calling crazy girl. I hope she sings this tonight. I know. Hey, Dad, pull over. We need gum.
I'm on it. Oh, honey? Here's some money.
What do we got here?
Hello.
Patient has a fractured fibula. Given him mild sedative, so he can be able to go on tomorrow.
Daddy's gonna be so excited.
All good. That killed him.
Paging Dr. Paul.
Hey, kid. You got to get down. Come on.
AmeriQuest Mortgage, proud sponsor.
So some of those, yes, were a little bit on the extreme side, but at least with that first video, you can see how perception and communication can come into play. So not fully understanding the big picture and the picture in general, and then how that entire situation could have been resolved with a simple act of communication.
And really, like, these weren't necessarily life-altering misperceptions or communication, but they certainly can be sometimes. So I have an example of an issue I had at a previous position where I almost got fired over a Christmas ornament. So we were hanging up decorations, and one of my coworkers taped up some little bulbs to her desk, and then she left for the day. And while she was gone, some of them fell off and broke. And so I was trying to find a dustpan. I was trying to find our janitor to see if I could borrow a dustpan and help clean it up, because obviously it wasn't going to just wait until she got back. But there was a miscommunication or misperception there that I just wanted the janitor to clean it up and I wasn't going to do anything until he got back from wherever he was at that particular time. And so someone came up and said, so this is the mess that no one will clean up. And I tried to explain to her, and I could tell that the situation was like a little tense. So I was trying to make a joke and saying that, no, not at all. I just, was trying to find a dustpan. I couldn't find one. And, I didn't want them to be mad about ruining our safety standards or, the little goals that we had set. And I ended up getting called into the manager's office because apparently she thought I was being really rude and that I was being lazy and didn't want to clean it up. And luckily it did not go that way. I didn't get fired, but it was honestly really close. My direct supervisor had to stick up for me. And so that miscommunication could have had life-altering impacts for me.
Yeah. So if you can take a look at the picture that is on the screen, what's an image that comes to mind? So if we were, doing this in person, we would get a raise of hands, but I just want you to take a look really quick. And the two responses that we get when we ask, well, what do you see when you look at this photo? A lot of times people will say a horse, or they'll say a frog. And really, it's both. So like Tiffany was, her example where it was pretty extreme, sometimes it just takes that step back and reevaluating that situation from a different point of view. So like this photo, one way you see a frog, if you turn it and look at it slightly different, it is a horse. So really it's both. So it's just really highlighting that one person's perception and somebody else's perception over the exact same picture can have two very different outcomes. So who are you?
So if we were doing this presentation in person, we'd have really nerdy shirts on with our MBTI, Myers-Briggs personality types on them. But unfortunately, this is a webinar, so we just want to talk about MBTI and really personality tests in general and how important we think they can be towards helping develop better relationships throughout your team. So 1 year for a team retreat, we spent the first half of the day taking the personality test and finding out what our type thought were, learning about them, and then we were sharing them with each other. And we really enjoyed it. And Alisha and I have kind of been obsessed with MBTI ever since.
Yes. And we also are slightly obsessed with Game of Thrones. And so we were able to find something that combined the both of them, and it made our hearts very happy. So if you know your MBTI score, then you can see sort of what character you relate to along with a similar saying for that particular character. And Tiffany and I, we both have kind of laughed at ours. I'm an ENTJ, so I'm Cersei, which I have mixed feelings about.
And I'm an INFP, so I'm Bran, but I think that's pretty spot on. I like to think of myself as a visionary and a dreamer. So just a little bit of a fun thing for you guys if you happen to like both MBTI and Game of Thrones like we do. But really what it boils down to is learning about yourself can help so much with other people learning about you too. So I'm never going to advocate for someone not to work on bettering themselves, but if you learn about your weakness, not only can it help you work towards them, but it can help other people understand you a little bit better too. So if you have a situation with a coworker and you just do not understand why they always behave the way they do, maybe taking the time to learn these kinds of things about each other can help you understand, oh, that's where they're coming from, and this is like a core piece of their personality that isn't likely to change overnight, so maybe I need to change my perspective and become a little bit more accepting of that and see how I might be able to help them. So Alisha and I have listed our strengths and weaknesses associated with our personality types to kind of share with you how we do that.
So we just picked a few out of, the lists that your results break down. And understanding too, this is not the end all be all. There were some strengths and weaknesses on both of our sides that were like, that's not 100% accurate. But for us, we picked out the ones that we felt really resonated well with us. So some of the strengths that I listed, I'm able to take criticism really well. I love having that kind of feedback. I tend to be more enthusiastic and energetic. I can handle conflict really well, and also I'm able to set my emotions aside.
And a lot of her strengths really reflect my weaknesses. So if you look at our personality type, she's an ENTJ, I'm an INFP. Other than the N, the intuition, we're exact opposites. So I tend not to take criticism very well, and it's something that I've been working on for years to be able to accept more. I also tend to be really shy and reserved, especially in new situations when I'm meeting new people. I like to observe things, and so that can kind of be a weakness sometimes. And I also struggle with conflict. I tend to react very emotional to stressful situations that involve conflict, and this can definitely get in my way. Again, I'm always striving to make these kinds of weaknesses better, but since Alicia's strengths counterbalance, she can help me with that.
Right, and vice versa.
Exactly. If I start reacting to a situation incredibly emotionally, I've had students come up and immediately they're crying, and I don't know why they're crying, but now I'm crying, and it's hard to move through that situation sometimes. I can have her step in and kind of reel me in a little bit and help find a solution without just, dissolving into a puddle of tears. But I also have strengths. Because I'm so emotionally in tune with myself, I'm also emotionally in tune with a lot of other people. I tend to be very warmly concerned and caring towards them, and I'm sensitive and perceptive about what they are feeling and how feelings may affect them. It just overall makes me much more nurturing, supportive, and encouraging of a person that always does strive for those win-win situations, because I don't want to see anyone in the situation dissatisfied.
And so a lot of her strengths tend to be my weaknesses. I can come across challenging or confrontational at times. I'm not naturally in tune with other people's feelings. I'm able to set my emotions aside, and so being in tune with how other people are feeling, I have trouble with. And we joke a lot saying that I only have one or two feelings, which isn't true, but maybe a little. And so, and then I have a hard time realizing when people need praise. I'm not a words of affirmation kind of person. I don't need it, and so I have a hard time giving it, which also goes back to that not being in tune with other people's feelings very well. And I can get involved in win-lose conversations. At times I can be a little competitive and wanting my ideas to come through. So I can sometimes get myself into those situations where also I'm a little confrontational and challenging.
And she recognizes that, and a lot of times she'll ask for my opinion. She'll be writing an email, and she'll call me over and say, hey, can you read this? Am I being too harsh? And, sometimes I have to remind her, like, hey, people have feelings, and maybe you shouldn't say this particular thing. And so overall, we just would really like you to consider how not just MBTI, there's lots of different personality tests out there, like what animal are you, what color are you, there's tons of them. But do you think that learning more about yourself and learning more about your coworkers can lend towards these kinds of things and have more cohesion and understanding of each other and how you can help each other out?
And even once Tiffany moved on to another team, she's still here, and I still rely heavily on her sometimes when it comes to, hey, am I being too harsh? I need your lens on things. So it's nice to still have her around. So going back to understanding where people are coming from, I have a team member who, in her personality type, it states that they have a very, very difficult time with change. I know change is hard for everybody, but for her particularly, they have a very difficult time with it and struggle with it. So this last fall, Banner 9 was coming, that was being implemented at the beginning of the year. And on top of that, I was adding 2 new software systems to the front office. So we were having a new call system, and then we were having a new system to track our walk-in traffic. And it was a lot, and it was a lot especially for this particular individual who already expressed to me the challenges that they were having with multiple things changing. So knowing this about this particular person, I wanted to make sure and minimize as much change as I had control over. So that meant keeping their schedule the same, their lunch hour the same, their break time the same, and everybody up front has we call a doc day. So any of the documents that need to be processed, there's one person in charge of doing all of them in that particular day. I made sure that her doc day stayed the same and I wasn't going to move it. Well, I did have another staff member come to me, and they didn't understand why I didn't just shift everybody's doc days when we had a new hire. And so I had to reframe and let that person know that, no, I'm not coddling her, but you have to remember, we just learned this during our last retreat, that they have a hard time with change. And this is one small area that I can minimize for this person. We don't want a simple, tiny thing of just changing the day that they process documents be the icing on the cake that just does it for her. That's not fair. And so once we talked through that piece, it was like, oh, you're right. It's not that big of a deal. I understand where you're coming from now. I don't mind moving my day from a Thursday to a Tuesday. So just getting that understanding and that reassurance of understanding with one another across the team has really helped with the conflict and the resolution within the department.
We do have a word of caution when it comes to this. If you're anything like me, I got very quickly obsessed with MBTI. And when we took the test at our retreat, it was the first time I had taken the test and really learned about MBTI. So personally, I had a hard time transitioning from learning about myself. I was captivated by what I was reading. I felt like someone had just opened up my soul and written down every one of my secrets. I couldn't understand how this little piece of paper knew so much about me. So when it came time to set that aside and start learning about our coworkers' personality types, I did have difficulty with that. So what I would suggest is perhaps if you're going to utilize this, have your team take the test before you even come together as a group. That way they can kind of get that out of their system if they tend to be that kind of person. And if not, it'll still just save time in general. Also, if this is something that you are going to consider, you may, depending on how much time you have, you may just want to focus on the strengths and weaknesses, because there are so many amazing things about personality tests, like how you are as a parent and that kind of stuff, that just aren't really necessary when it comes to work. So you may just want to be really focused.
Speaking of retreats, we love our retreats over here. And when I started as an enrollment services associate, we had one retreat during the year. It was during the winter. It was a working goal setting retreat. We didn't do anything fun. We didn't do any team building. It was strictly, let's go through our goals, let's review code of conduct, and that was it. So when I took over the position, team building is something that I find very important, and it's something that I really strive to push towards. So I was able to get the approval to have 2 retreats in the year. We have a summer retreat, which is very focused on team building, and then our winter retreat, where we do still do our goal setting for the year, but we also incorporate an aspect of team building. So our first summer retreat we were able to do, we did an escape room. It was so much fun. We did manage to escape with 30 seconds left on the clock. And it was really neat to see everybody's different strengths when it came to solving puzzles, and we all worked really well together to get out of there on time. And then one of our winter retreats, what we did is we did a fun paint that was led by Tiffany. And so she led us through a little like sip and paint without the sip. And we had a really great time, and it was a lot of fun to just relax and just spend time with one another doing an activity. And we've also, during another retreat, we've spent half the day just playing games. And if you won, then you got to pick a prize, and it was like some SOU swag that we had set aside, and so people were able to win little prizes, and it just made it a really great time. Some other departments, we've heard they've gone out to the movies for their retreats. Some departments previously were able to use jet boats before they decided that that was not an appropriate activity due to risk. But then, you know, other departments and other institutions have shared overnight camping trips that they've done. And at one of our last conferences we presented at, they were going to be doing axe throwing as team building, which Tiffany and I totally wanted to be a part of their team just to go throw axes because we thought that would be a lot of fun.
There are so many amazing things that you can do to really just get to know the people that you work with on a different level, because honestly, we spend so much time with them that we want to be able to enjoy them, and we find that these particular activities are so helpful. News team assemble. So, I know how much everyone loves meetings. I just love it when my entire day is filled with meetings and I don't get to be at my desk at all. Obviously kidding. But I think it's really important to at least have a set aside time to where you can come together as a team if needed. I'm never going to be one that will say you should have a meeting just for the sake of having a meeting, but to be able to have that time if necessary can be really important. There's so many times where we get so busy and we miss important information. Maybe something came through and we were gone that day. Maybe we've been gone on vacation for a week and we're still sifting through 200 emails and we haven't gotten to that important piece of info yet that we might need sooner rather than later. There's many different reasons why we may not know something right off the bat. And so having an opportunity to come together as a team and talk about those things can be really critical. Same for if you just need to vent. I mean, we've all had bad days. We've all had just bad periods of time. And it's nice to come together and talk through that as a group. Maybe they have some helpful solutions. Maybe someone can help you out, or maybe they can just be there to hear you out. There's a lot of great things that can happen during team meetings. And again, just another opportunity to spend time with one another. In the past, we used to do something called Good Things to try to like bring a positive spin to our team meetings. We would write down good things that happened to us during the week, and we would share that during the meeting just to kind of let everyone know, like, yeah, sometimes stuff kind of sucks, but look at these good things that happened. But the important thing, like I mentioned, is make your meetings matter. Don't ever just have a meeting for the sake of having a meeting, because people are just going to be miserable wanting to get back to their work and their desks. So if you don't have anything to meet about that week, great. But at least set aside that opportunity to have it if anyone comes. A lot of times, you know, we'll talk in chat and say, you know, hey, I don't really want to call a meeting today, but does anyone have anything? And a lot of times it's like, no, we're good. But sometimes someone's like, actually, I do have something that I really want your guys' opinions on, so maybe we'll just have a shorter meeting that day. But at least we have the opportunity.
So all work and no play. It definitely makes Jack a dull boy. So work is work, and yes, it needs to get done. But I do allow my team the flexibility to be able to have conversations with one another and to be able to get to know one another, especially during times like now during summer. We don't have a lot of students in the office, and our phone isn't ringing as much as it is during the academic year. So I allow them to, as long as work is getting done, to have those conversations with one another. We also use Google Hangout, and so there's a lot of times where we'll send funny memes back and forth to each other. send funny little comments, and it just kind of helps brighten up everybody's day, especially when you are a frontline staff and you do have to have some interactions sometimes that tend to be a little bit more difficult. It's nice to be able to have your coworkers next to you, support you through that, and then lighten up the mood after sometimes things don't go that well. Also, by getting to know your coworkers and knowing their personalities and how they would react to situations, the one photo of the birthday crown is one of our coworkers. He had turned 40, and we know his personality, and so we decided to give him a princess-themed birthday cube, and so we decorated his cube, gave him a crown, which he did wear all day, by the way, and loved it. And so it was just knowing that we could do that with this particular person, where there's other people on the team we know don't like this big display, and so just a birthday card and a small balloon or a small thing of flowers is exactly what they need, what they want, and they don't want anything above or beyond that. But also keeping in mind that if a student walks in the door or that phone rings, those conversations do stop and it's back to work. There's times where I've even gone out there when it's been quiet to have those conversations with them too, because I want my team and myself to get to know one another as people and not just somebody they sit next to every day.
And we wouldn't have this opportunity if we didn't care enough to do this. So it's really all down to, do you care enough to do these things with your team to improve that relationship? And I know a lot of this stuff probably seems pretty obvious. I mean, we're humans, we're social, we talk to our coworkers, of course. But there's a lot of different management styles out there. Are you a manager, or maybe do you have a manager that does allow these kinds of things? Or are you more the management style, or have a manager that is, a stickler saying every second of work time needs to be absolutely productive? And, if that is you or your team, maybe is there something that can be shifted? Would you have better team morale if you were able to enjoy yourselves a little bit more? And, it's been shown in the past that people who enjoy their jobs are more productive. So we just think it's really important to have those opportunities. All right, so another thing that we like to do is have some extracurricular time together. Now, I know that we spend, usually 40 hours a week with these people, so I'm not saying that, I hang out with them every single week or every day or anything, but sometimes it's really nice to be able to come together completely outside of work and, not have, that sense of work interrupting anything or getting in the way of you just enjoying your time. So, we try and we suggest that maybe you try to get together once per term. We think that's a fair amount of time. And it doesn't even have to be after work. Some people do like team lunches that are really great for them somewhere off-site. On the particular team that we were on at the time, we couldn't do that because we had staggered lunches because our office never closed during the middle of the day. So we would choose to do dinners. It started off as dinners once per term. And it was just a really nice place where we didn't have to worry about anything like work involved. But it kind of evolved into more than just team dinners. We've done several like paint nights together, and have even had game nights at each other's houses. That picture that you can see where everyone's sitting at the table and I'm taking a selfie, it's not just coworkers. There are coworkers and our spouses and significant others. And so we recognize that, if you choose to spend some time with your coworkers outside work, you may end up be giving up some time with your family. And we don't want that. So we would invite our family to that as well, so we can just enjoy time all together. And it's really been helpful for us.
Yeah, we try to do like a game night once a month, and we know that's a lot and it's a big commitment. It doesn't always happen that way because life and schedules, but it's something that we at least throw out there, and all of a sudden someone will be like, oh, we need to do a game night soon, or when are we going to do our start of term dinner? And so these are just Yeah, it's just really fun, great little activities to do.
And we recognize that they're not going to be for everyone. Some people don't necessarily like to do that kind of stuff, and that's absolutely okay. We always make sure that we let them know that, hey, you're always invited to these kinds of things. It is an open door, but if you do not feel comfortable or just don't want to, that's completely okay as well. We will never think differently of you.
So mi casa, su casa. So open door policy is typically a big buzzword, especially within leadership, but it doesn't mean anything unless you actually follow through with it. So I know this is a really funny Dilbert about an open door policy and how they say they have one, but they don't have one. But this is something that I really strive to actually have and follow through with. I have an open door policy. My people can come talk to me about anything at any point. If I'm not in the office, they're always welcome to chat me or text me if they've got something that's going on that they really need to talk about and discuss right away. So I just make sure that I'm there and I'm there to be, listened to or heard with any concerns that they have, whether there's been times they've come to me with a little bit more personal information and some personal concerns or things that are going on in their lives that they need help with, or they just need somebody to talk to. And I have people come to me with suggestions about making a form better, or like, this process isn't going very well. Can we sit down and talk through how we can make it better? But the biggest thing is that I'm always there and will never turn somebody away. And that just goes with being a good leader. I'm not there to dictate to anybody how things need to go or what they need to be doing. I definitely don't micromanage, and that's not anything I feel is it's a good management style, but that's my personal opinion with it. I look at being a leader and leadership as I'm willing to get into the trenches, and I'm willing to get on the phones during start of term. I'm willing to meet with students. I'm willing to do all the things that everybody underneath me does. I'm willing to just jump in and get what needs to be done at all times.
And from personal experience being on Alisha's team, that has been so helpful. I have had so many managers in the past that honestly just didn't care. If I went to them with a problem, or maybe they wanted me to do something and I wanted to have a conversation about it, saying like, oh, hey, can we make this better? Like, it was more just sit down, listen to me, shut up, and then leave and get your work done. There was like never that opportunity to really have a conversation or be able to talk about what was going on in my life. And those jobs were miserable. And being able to work with the amazing people we have here, I've never once felt like that, and it has kept me here. So we're going to transition a little bit. So we've been talking about your existing teams. Now we want to talk about different ways to kind of help you find the perfect fit when you do have opportunities to have new team members. So I'd like to you to think a little bit about what your perspective on turnover is. So a lot of times when we ask this question, we have pretty negative connotations associated with turnover. And yes, it can be really frustrating sometimes, especially depending on the position. Maybe it does require a lot of training. Our front staff requires 4 weeks solid of training, and so turnover can definitely be a frustrating thing. But I'd like to tilt that a little bit and counter it with turnover can actually also be a really good opportunity to find amazing new people.
Right. And so we stopped and we looked at the turnover with the front staff. It is an entry-level position, so it is going to be a spot where it's going to have some turnover. Well, we looked at the last 10 people that left. 8 out of those 10 moved on to bigger and better positions within the university. So they never left SOU. They just were essentially able to promote themselves into another area and another department. And only 2 of them, they left because they were moving or because of family things that they needed to be closer to home for. And so I think that's, speaks a lot of volumes of the type of people that we look at and we try to find and hire. It's people that not only fit with us, but fit within the university.
So we definitely look at new hires as new opportunities, and we hope that's something that you can kind of look at as well. And one thing is the interview process. What does that look like? And so here's some interview questions that we like to ask during our interviews, and maybe you want to think about what kind of questions you ask during your interviews. Do you want to take some of these questions, or maybe, just rethink questions in general of, what kind of people are you looking for?
And what are you trying to gain from asking those specific questions? So like with that first question we have listed is, what would you do if you encountered an unmotivated coworker on your team? A lot of the typical responses for that is, I would go to my manager and talk to them. But that's not the answer that we're trying to gain from this question. The best answers that we get out of it is, I would talk to that person. I would ask them, hey, I noticed you've been struggling. Do you need help? Is everything going okay? The type of people that we want on our team is individuals that are going to look at their coworkers as people and not just somebody that they have to work with. That's the biggest thing, because a lot of times people want to work, they want to do a good job, and if you see a decline in productivity or a decline in motivation, it typically means that something's going on. And so I really like the response of, I would go to that person first. And then really with the next question on focusing on relationships and teamwork, I want people who are comfortable with working on a team and they're comfortable with building those relationships with other people. And then lastly, the describing your perfect work environment, it's really finding somebody who wants to come to work, they're happy to come to work, they're happy with the people that they're working with, and it's more so being excited about the day-to-day things that they have to do versus, my perfect work day, it'd be 75 degrees outside, everything would be perfect throughout the day, and then I'd get to go home.
Or I get to go home early, as we've been told before.
Right. We want people to be excited about coming to work and doing their job.
And really it just goes to, you're finding a perfect fit for this person as well. We are never just looking for exactly the same type of people as we are. As we mentioned before with the personality types, it's nice to have those balances. So if someone does have a different personality style, then we're 100% okay with that. We just want to make sure that we're finding people who, aren't saying, well, I just want to come to work and not have to talk to anyone ever and just stay in my office all day and then I get to go home, because, that particular position is probably not going to be a good fit for them. There may be positions out there, but usually you have to talk to someone at some point, either on a weekly or daily basis. So those are the kinds of people that we just want to avoid, because honestly, they're probably not going to like the job anyway, and they're not going to last very long. So it needs to be a mutual benefit for us and for them. And another thing that really helps is explaining your personal experience. So I've been on so many search committees now that I've been here for several years, and pretty much every search committee I've been on, the candidate asks, at least at one point, what is your favorite thing about working at SOU? And honestly, 9 times out of 10, every single committee member's response is the people. And it's true. We just have such a great community here that is really supportive of one another. And as I mentioned before, I wouldn't trade these people for the world, and it makes coming to work a joy. If I have a bad day, it's not because of my coworkers like it has been in previous positions. And it tends to really help sell the position to people who want that kind of work style. So during these interview processes, don't forget to share that experience with people, and you may have really great results. We were at a conference one year, and this one girl who worked at another institution, she just enjoyed our team dynamic so much that when a position became available, she ended up applying for that position, and she stated in her cover letter it was because seeing you guys at the conference, I really wanted to be a part of your team, and we were super thrilled with that.
Yep.
So another thing that can be done is during the training. So once you have a new hire on board, it's really helpful to let them get to know everyone. So whether or not everyone does the same job on the team, you don't want to overwhelm them. You probably want them to have one trainer while they get the hang of things. But then afterwards, kind of branch out and sit with everyone else. That way they may learn new ways of doing things because everyone has different styles. Or maybe they just get to know that person a little bit better, so they're not just, only getting to know that one person. Or maybe you are on a team where everyone does a different job. It can really help them to go sit with other people and learn, hey, how do our roles interact? And really, how do our roles in general support the university? Why am I here? And again, just get to know them rather than just that one trainer.
So one of the other things that we really like to do is involve our new hires in everything right away. So we did have a team member who wasn't starting yet. He had gone through the hiring process, and it was still a week out until they would actually be starting the position. But we were having our start of term dinner, and we called him up and invited him and was like, hey, this is what we're doing. If you can make it, you're welcome to join us, meet the team before you start. And he showed up, and it was a really great time. So it's really important to consider that when you have new people starting, to make sure that they're being included in everything right away, so they don't feel like they're this new alienated person that's on a team that they don't quite connect with yet because they haven't had those opportunities.
I was also able to have this opportunity. So when I started, I was set to start on a Monday, and the Friday before I got invited to the team dinner. And so being more shy and reserved like I am, I did have to step out of my comfort zone a little bit to attend that dinner, but it made starting the position so much nicer for me because I had already talked to all these people and gotten to know them at least a little bit, had great conversations. So when I started the position, I didn't have to try to worry about learning this new job as well as these new people because I was already comfortable with them, and it was an amazing experience.
Yeah, we've noticed it's made a huge difference with new hires and the morale.
But we also give people an out. We've been asked before in sessions saying, well, don't you think this might pressure people a little bit too much? And what if they're not comfortable with this, especially because it's outside work time? And we always frame it in a way that lets them know, hey, we would love to have you there and you're more than welcome to come, but we also understand if you can't or, maybe just are not comfortable with it. You just make sure that you frame things in a way where they don't feel pressured. All right, so we want to take a couple minutes to talk about a team lead and a manager dynamic. So take a second to think about your team. Every team is set up a little bit differently, so it may not be ideal for you to have a team leader and a manager. But if it is, then this section might help you, and if it's not, this may be something you want to consider in your future, maybe for new positions. So just bear with us. Maybe you could even consider a restructuring at some point where this would be helpful. But if you do think that maybe your team could benefit from a team lead or maybe has one, how might you best utilize your team lead? So when I came on board, I was a little nervous at first. I'd never been in a leadership role, and so I didn't want to let anybody down. But honestly, I'm so glad that I took on that role because I learned so many things, and it was a benefit all around. It really benefited my team because I was able to advocate for their best interest because I knew exactly what they were going through because I was going through it too. And that really led to more motivation and just improved the team morale. And I was also a trusted source of guidance for my team, and they could communicate things to me. we've all had those managers who are in meetings 7 of 8 hours of the day, and you don't always get a chance to pinpoint them and say, hey, I have this thing I need to talk to you about. And so having them be able to come to me as kind of like a midpoint really helps that. And in turn, it really helped Alisha as well, because I was able to provide her a reliable backup as needed, and offering that improved morale for the team made it less likely that she would have to manage a bunch of conflict. I was also able to act as her department liaison, so there were times where she was scheduled for 2 meetings at once, and since we haven't figured out a way to be in 2 places at once yet, she was able to send me in her stead to one of those meetings, because it was really important that our department had representation at that meeting. So it definitely benefited her as well. And then, of course, it benefited me. I had a ton of opportunity for growth. Like I said, I'd never been in a leadership role, and so I got to kind of take that on and learn things about myself that I didn't really know. And then, of course, I got to have professional development and resume skills off of it. And people started noticing me that otherwise, didn't really know me that well. And I got the position that I have today really because my work as lead. The associate registrar then at the time and the person who was in my position, they noticed the kinds of things that I was doing, and they thought that I would be a great person to cover for her while she went on maternity leave. And so I got the opportunity to learn her position and help cover her while I was doing my other duties, so that eventually when the position opened up, I already had all that experience and I had that good name for myself, so I was easily able to transition.
So switching gears just a little bit to the dynamics that you can create within your entire office space and across departments. So the building that we're in, it houses all the front staff, Bursar's office, Reg and Records, and financial aid. And so we're in the same space with one another every day, all day. So building those relationships with those departments, especially because we interact so much, is so important, and it's critical to get a lot of things that we need to get done. So we've gone to conferences together, we've done sip and paints together, and you can see by some of our pictures here, we had a Halloween contest, and most of the office dressed up. And it was a really great time and a lot of fun, and you could really see people's personalities come through. But really, building those relationships and understanding and getting to know the people you work with is really important here, just because there's so many times there's information sharing, and financial aid might be changing a new process. And if you have a rocky relationship with your financial aid department, you might not be getting those updates as quickly as if you have a really good relationship with them. They come in and do trainings at least once a month with the front staff, because things change all the time. And so building that rapport and those relationships has really helped at least the front staff do their jobs better.
And when you get to know people that you don't necessarily work with every day because they're in a different department, it kind of just helps you understand them a little bit better. I'm sure your institution is like ours, where sometimes departments just tend to butt heads. And really, everyone's here for the same reason. We're all trying to help the student, and maybe we just don't understand each other's processes. So being able to learn about each other, it really just helps you understand what might be going on and present more of a united front that we are here to help these students rather than having to butt heads all the time. So we utilize everything we've talked about here today with other people and not just our own individual teams.
So that does conclude our presentation. We do have this slide for resources. The MBTI quiz that we've used during our retreats is the top one from Dartmouth. It's a very intense one. There's like 72 some pages to, or questions to it. But then you can also use like quick websites like 16 Personalities or Personality Max.
And just a quick disclaimer about fair use. A lot of the images we used in this presentation do not belong to us, but we are using them for educational purposes only. So if you have would like more information about that, you can visit this link.
And then lastly, we'd like to leave it on this slide if we have time for questions or comments. It's testimonials from people throughout the entire office about the team dynamics and working with one another. So thank you so much for joining us with this webinar.
Yes, please let us know if you have any questions.
Great. Well, thank you both. If you're okay with it, I may just send out your emails along with the email I send out to everyone with the follow-up and the YouTube link for this, so they can maybe email you personally with any questions that they have. Would that be all right?
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. And thanks for sharing your experiences with us. And hopefully we'll see you all at the next webinar.
Indeed.